think our key goal when we said we're going to have a panel on the stage was to make sure speakers stay on the stage, because it's quite a, do not move too much. Thank you so much all for coming today, and then hello again. As Andrei said, I'm Oana Jinga, and for those of you who I haven't met yet, I am CCO and Chief Product Officer as well at Dexory. So very, very thrilled to see so many people in the room, obviously supporting a big theme that we're very passionate about, which is visibility and data. And as you probably would have heard already from the first speakers, like one of the key objectives we have for today is actually to understand this transformative power of real-time data across the supply chain landscape, but most importantly, understanding some practical ways in which you can kind of actually address that and then bring it back to your businesses, because yes, we all know data is important, but how do you actually capture it, use it, and then obviously get it as a barebone of the organization. And I'm thrilled to have on stage two fantastic speakers with me today that Andrei already introduced, but I'll let them to go in a little bit more depth into their career in a second, to just kind of go through a very kind of important topic related to that data, which is understanding what the visibility gap in the supply chain actually is and how are ways that we can address that. So to start with, Maria, Harry, would you like to just give us a brief overview of your careers?
So real quick, I'm the Senior Director of Central Materials. We have an interesting job. We get to deal with supplier to line side. So we do all the inbound transportation for GE appliances. We have 9 manufacturing plants in the United States. We have a partner in Mexico that also manufactures for us. The boring part is, dealing with international logistics right now, Red Sea, all that stuff. The fun part is doing automation. So part of my job is to automate the inbound supply chain. So we get to do the fun things. We're running a self-driving truck right now between one of our factories and a warehouse. And so that's what really keeps me excited. Before that, I worked in automotive. I set up the Hyundai plant in Alabama, and then had a couple other stints in automotive, and also worked for Whirlpool Corporation, one of the big competitors to GE appliances.
Thank you. Maria?
Hi. Maria Torrent March. I work all my life in logistics and 3PL. Pretty much everything from air freight, sea freight, road freight, lately in contract logistics, warehousing, e-commerce, retail, kind of you name it. I started at Iron Mountain last year, a year ago, and my role is to build a strategy for the company, making sure that we have the right foundations to achieve our very ambitious growth plans. And I think a bit like Harry, the exciting bit about my job is building a 3PL from the ground up, when you don't have legacy and you can really innovate from the start.
Perfect. Thank you both so much. I think to kick us off, I'm just going to go through a couple of points in kind of discussing how we see the visibility gap at Dexory and most of kind of the people that we speak to and our speakers today as well, and just presenting a couple of stats to get the conversation going. And I think kind of Mike covered that quite extensively. That there's no secret that supply chains today are impacted by a series of internal and external challenges. I mean, it's very much across the world, and to be able to succeed in this environment, they just have to become more and more resilient, which obviously means all the companies working around the supply chain need to embrace that resilience as well. And so much so that over 50% of organizations are actually increasing investment in making their supply chain more resilient. And that obviously is to give them more control over risk exposure and reacting to the risks that we already talked about earlier. But on the flip side, also be able to embrace opportunities and be able to jump on demand spikes very, very quickly. Which means that resilience at the end of the day is a balance of opposites. And at Dexory, where we're actually kind of embracing that quite a lot in our own teams as well, finding a way to blend reliability, but also speed, and also accuracy, but keeping flexibility quite high. And I think 4 years on from the COVID disruptions, which probably they're still kind of around today anyway, it's quite evident that one key prerequisite to be able to achieve that resilient and balanced supply chain is visibility. So visibility kind of triggers a whole kind of range of actions around it. But at the core of that visibility is intelligence. Again, something that was touched on a lot today. So being able to have access to fast, reliable intelligence over and over again across the business. And a very kind of probably surprising fact as well, one of the ones I was actually talking to one of the panelists earlier, but only 6% of logistics companies globally can claim that they actually have full visibility over their operations. So to us, I mean, it was quite low, and happy to kind of provide all the sources in the back data for this, but that kind of raised quite a lot of questions for us, so very, very interested to obviously explore that further. And on the back of it, 2/3 of logistics leaders actually emphasize the need to increase that visibility to be able to have sustainable and reliable operations. And maybe just one element, the lack of visibility usually kind of leads to very frantic and panic behaviors. So an example that we have here, US retailers are seeing an impact of $2 trillion on their P&L, just on the back of like underreacting or overreacting to the stock challenges that they have. I mean, it's a pretty big number for one market and one sector, right? But at the end of the day, going back to what I was saying earlier, a visibility gap is at the end an intelligence gap. So why is this visibility so hard to achieve? Why is it hard to achieve accurate, reliable, real-time, and complete data? And there's a multitude of challenges that we're going to dive into in a second, starting from what some of the guys were saying earlier as well, even deciding what data is collected, getting your heads around all the multitude of elements that are out there, making sure that's accurate, continuous, and at the end of the day also being able to action those insights that you extract from that. Because blind spots can pretty much happen at any point in the supply chain, which is why we kind of have our two kind of panelists today kind of covering that end-to-end. From the moment a product is even kind of conceived and thought about all the way to the moment it gets to a customer. And what we're finding quite often is actually the warehouse seems to be one of the points where a lot of this kind of visibility starts to leak. And it's obvious because that's probably the point where most of the processes are happening, where most people are employed, there's machinery, there's multiple customers kind of sharing the same roof. So it pretty much kind of nurtures that potential of error and potential of lack of visibility. And of course, you've got things that are very simple, like human errors, all the way down to theft and damages and systems not talking to one another and so on. So there's a multitude of risks there that would lead for the data to not be complete. And so much so that over 6,500 hours are spent every year in a warehouse just with simple processes and trying to keep track of where inventory is, like cycle counting and stock checking. And from our experience so far in the warehouses we have deployed in globally, a lot of our customers are claiming, no, I think we're pretty good in terms of accuracy. It's probably like somewhere around 99%. And then you kind of go in, we use our robotics technology, we scan the warehouse, and the first kind of points of data kind of show somewhere between 91 to 95. So usually people, oh yeah, well, on that day potentially something happened, and then the question is like, okay, how many of those days you actually have? And it turns out, yeah, the reality is quite different to what the systems are saying. And at 24 minutes to address a discrepancy, obviously that is a massive efficiency drain if you kind of start thinking about the size of those sites. Of course, with having access to that data, usually we kind of see that the accuracy going up quite quickly. But going back to the point earlier, they also need to act on it. So if you do find a discrepancy, you need to solve it. So I think moving to our panelists now. I think, first of all, you represent different stages of the sectors I was saying earlier. Was there any of the stats that we went to and any of the things you've heard today kind of surprise you, or is something that you can relate to very, very easily?
I don't think really surprising. I mean, I think a lot of it is we know we don't have enough data or the right data. I think probably the one stat was wrong, 26% wanting more data. I think it's probably 90% of us want more information to be able to make clear, concise, direction to kind of go forward with.
Thanks, Maria.
I think the first statistic about the 6% businesses that have full visibility, I think that sometimes we think that we have better visibility than what we actually have. And even if we have full visibility within our operations or our warehouse, we don't work in isolation. We collaborate with partners, suppliers, customers. And I think that's when we have a lot of gaps. And we need to use more collaboration to extend that visibility.
Thank you. And by the way, there is a QR code on the screen, so if you do have any points that you want to add, any questions for the panelists or just in general, feel free to scan it and then submit them, and yeah, we can have a conversation at the end. Should have mentioned that a bit earlier. But going back to the concept of the visibility gap, is that something that you kind of discussed, obviously, at board level in your companies? Is something you've encountered, and does it have any particular meaning in your business?
I think we talk about it constantly. We have teams set together to see what we can do for better forecasting or better visibility. How do we flow to the customer? We have a philosophy of nearness to the customer. How close can we get to it to understand their needs and be able to flip on a dime? So we have probably 20 different activities to try to figure that out, to get that end-to-end supply chain visibility. It's very difficult. We live in too many different systems, so there's not one coordinating data system that we can go to. Unfortunately, a lot of times in decision making, we're dumping that down into Excel, and we have our co-ops write us some code in C++ to go and manipulate that data to understand it. I think that's probably the big gap that we see, but it is talked a lot in the industry, in the business as a whole. From the CEO down, there's a big push to utilize AI to determine what we need to do with that data. A lot of times when we do get data, we're confused by it. We don't know, what to do with it. But it is a big concern in the industry, especially in G appliances, to try to drive, and what do we do with that data when we get it.
Thank you.
I think from a 3PL perspective or warehousing, this visibility gap is the difference between running an efficient operation or an inefficient one. And we do talk about it in the business. We tend to talk about it more when things go wrong. And I think that perhaps a more proactive approach will be better, and try to map all the process and spot those gaps. Sometimes you have really good systems. Automation certainly helps with providing good data and good insights, but again, they don't work in isolation. There are other elements and other processes that are not fully automated. System need to talk. So it's about ensuring that the communication, the information flows, and that we have good insights.
Perfect. I think because you've touched a little bit about it, kind of looking at it when things go wrong, is there any element of, let's say, kind of impact of data that you have quantified at all in things that you are doing, like trying to understand, like, okay, if we don't have this piece of information, this is going to be the impact on our efficiency or on the operations, or on the contrary, when you did start kind of to embrace data in something, you've seen a positive impact?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, during COVID, we just reacted to everything. So I hate to say cost didn't matter, but we just, we would take quick data points, all right, get it on a plane. We chartered 747s to keep the factories up and running. Demand was really high, so for us it was abandon all kind of logic and thought process and just run. I think since we've come out of COVID, we're very focused on how to use that data, what we learned during COVID to protect the supply chain, and really build out that understanding. So I think it's there, it's coming back. I think, again, we got really sloppy for those few years in COVID. This past year, we're really going in. Again, we work with several different teams to understand how we set Oracle up correctly. How do we oddly enough, I know that Oracle sponsors Red Bull, but it's a very difficult system to work within. We do our quality approvals in part of Oracle, but it doesn't translate over to the other part of Oracle, which is really strange. And so it's more and more critical that we're making faster, better decisions to prevent cost. And again, we learn a big lesson that data is very powerful in how we make decisions. We're using, we're trying to pull multiple data points right now. With the Red Sea, diversions going on for the U.S. is critical. We still bring in about 30% of our product from Asia, component parts. And so when we have these spikes or difficulties moving product around, the data is critical for us to make those decisions on. We do some fast boat, which we bring through the West Coast versus Panama, or Suez is basically shut down now. And so we're making those decisions all the time, looking at inventory levels, going back in there and seeing where we need to spend more money. Containers prices are going up. We just got a 20% hike from one of our biggest carriers, Maersk, yesterday. We're getting those from everybody. They're kind of flowing through right now from O&E. But it's difficult with that. And then when we have to fast boat something, we're paying a premium of $10,000 to bring one container over. And so we have to make sure we're understanding those data points. Can we risk it a little bit by not bringing things over a little bit? Can we change schedules around even, but that impacts our customer base. So we're very cognizant of how do we keep the customer happy, keep costs low, and keep everything flowing. It's not, I guess during COVID we had pricing power. We could normally sell a refrigerator for $1,000, we could sell for $1,500 and everybody bought them. And we could sell as many as we built. Nowadays the consumer is back to expecting that $1,000 refrigerator to have a $300 rebate on it. And so the price pressure is so much more critical. And the data again, is so, we can't, I guess you get sloppy when you have pricing power. You lose that pricing power, you get very focused on data and what you need to do to make those correct decisions on where to spend the money.
Thank you.
And I think for us, rather than volume of data, is having the right data, focusing on KPIs. I think sometimes less is more, and making sure that we have adequate KPIs that can give us those insights in how well we are running and then how quick we can react if things are not going to plan. I think having heard some bits this morning about accuracy of data and what we get sometimes from our customers that might not be what we desire in terms of accuracy or the data that we need. I think it's important to have our own systems and build either AI or our own analysis to unravel trends and to be able to be helpful there for customers. Sometimes we can predict more accurately what is going to happen or what is happening now, and then have that collaborative approach.
Thank you. And I think probably going back to you, Maria, because you're much closer to the warehouse. I mean, we touched very briefly on the chances of things kind of going wrong in the warehouse. Is that something that you are tracking? I know you're kind of just starting on the journey on contract logistics in our mountain, and how kind of prevalent is that in the way you're running the warehouses in a way? Is that something you go back to?
Yes, we do measure where things go wrong or go right. We have a set of KPIs, and for me, it's having that information available to the right people in the company and have it in a timely manner so that we are able to react quickly and improve the situation. We have a culture of continuous improvement, and that's what we want to keep improving.
Thank you. Is that the same from your side, Harry? Is that how, because obviously you're looking after a whole kind of range of different parts of the supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're always looking, in the warehouses in particular, we want to know, again, it's a balancing act. With the rise of Amazon, which has been rising for 10, 15, 20 years now, they're sucking down all the warehouse space everywhere in the United States. It's hard to find a warehouse anymore, and at a reasonable price. So I think what we find is that the data, especially in the warehouse, is even more critical because we have to do a balancing act of expanding to a new warehouse, staying in our current footprint. So again, we're balancing cost of transportation, balancing cost of storing that inventory, cost of delivering that inventory to the factories, or impacting the factory. So it's very critical, I think, that we understand the warehousing needs. And we dabble around all the time. We got into overflow warehouse space. It's not conducive for us. Our systems don't work well once we move to an outside temporary warehouse that we're paying month to month for. The data handling and understanding is a lot more difficult. The systems aren't there, or the infrastructure. And so we're moving in and out. So it's again, as we focus this year and last year really on how do we control that data, get out overflow warehouses, how to get that accurate data inside the warehouses, that we can make the right decisions on what we bring over and what we don't bring over. It's always a battle, no matter what. The consumer is finicky. 1 week they like stainless steel, next week they like black, next week they like blue or some other strange color. So, but we do try to build out models on unique SKUs versus a common component, and then manage the warehouses that way also. So it is a very fine balance.
Thank you. And I think since, I mean, you're both on stage with me today, it's probably no secret that we are collaborating together to kind of have or kind of have very, very soon the Dexory technology in the warehouses. And maybe just one final question for me before I open it to the audience. What was the kind of element that attracted you to obviously what we do at Dexory, and you wanted to embrace that at scale as well?
Yeah. A bias side to me is I love automation. So I like toys and different things. We've been really looking for, with cycle counting, again, I think the standard mantra for robotics is dirty, dangerous, dull jobs. Cycle counting to us is, it's putting somebody on an order picker, sending him 32 feet up in the air is not a good way we want to run it. Even though there are 3PLs have workman comp claims, it drives our costs up eventually. So we want to figure out ways to get rid of those dangerous jobs. Also, with the manpower, we have to have a lot of people, and it takes them a whole month to count the warehouse. And so we're very interested in getting faster response data back. For instance, we have one of our warehouses, a new employee, they put them on cycle counting, they counted everything wrong. But for us to go back and figure out what they counted and recount everything is very cumbersome. So we're very interested in Dexory because we believe we can get it out. Send the robot out, find out what the guy was supposed to count, recount everything, get it back in. It's not just the data, it's the timing of the data. We get it a lot quicker. Again, we seem to see this with turnover. We have a hard time. Cycle counting, you would think, hey, go out there, count, come back, write it down. It would be simple. But it is one of those skill sets that we have a hard time, bringing people in and kind of training them on. So we're very interested in finding an automated solution. We've been looking probably for, over 5 years now. I actually have a drone in my office that I try to think I was clever, and I had a couple of my engineers try to build out our own cycle counting with a drone. We flew it one time, I think, and now it sits in my office for 5 years. So we weren't very successful. So we've always been looking for a partner that can help us out with automating this process, doing it. It's really not necessarily, in this case, the headcount reduction. It's really, it's the quality of the data and the timeliness of the data, and the fact that I can go check that data 30 times what I would have had to do with my current staffing, or 30 times my current staffing, which I just can't afford to do. So it's very critical for us to get that clean data consistently and constantly.
Thanks, Harry.
I think I mentioned at the beginning that Iron Mountain is in a unique position of building a 3PL from the ground up. I think perhaps I should have given a little bit of background about the company for whoever doesn't know Iron Mountain. It's a 5 billion company, global company, 26,000 employees, and the core of the business is record management, technology, and information and security. But a little bit over 2 years ago, the company decided to expand the business unit into a 3PL, becoming a 3PL. And there has been a very rapid growth. In the last 2 years, we have gone from no warehouses to having 12 warehouses in the UK, 2.4 million square feet of facilities. And with that, we not only needed the real estate, but we also needed the structure, the people, the organization, and the systems. And part of my job was to find out how we build those systems. And when we look at inventory management, we wanted something that could give us that accuracy and real-time data, not only to help our customers to reduce their inventory. If you have real data, you don't need to overstock for the just in case. But as well to run the operation efficiently, to make sure that we have visibility of the warehouse, of the apertures and how they are occupied, and to optimize our warehouse space.
Thank you both. And thank you all so much.